That's Life Unlimited.
We said we'd never break the 3-second rule. Never do that. And never become a minivan mom.
Hey, Chris.
As parents, we say never a lot, but never happens. So when you say you'd never leave your child in a hot car, know it can happen. Before you leave the car, always stop, look, lock.
Good morning, I'm Bree Driscoll, and here's your Spectrum News in 90. Israel's killing of Yahya Sinwar, Hamas's top leader and the mastermind of the October 7th attack, marks a pivotal moment in the brutal year-long war that it touched off. President Joe Biden and Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu agree this is an opportunity to bring home hostages in Gaza. Netanyahu says Israel has settled its account with Sinwar, but that the war is not yet ended. We are now just 18 days until Election Day, and both presidential candidates are focusing on the country's swing states. Vice President Kamala Harris hitting Wisconsin yesterday, where she blasted comments former President Donald Trump made this week about January 6th. The vice president will be in Michigan today. Trump will also be in Michigan today campaigning. Last night, he attended the Al Smith charity dinner in New York City. Trump repeatedly criticized Harris over her decision to skip the event. Traditionally, presidential candidates attend the dinner. The Texas Supreme Court halts the scheduled execution of inmate Robert Robertson. Robertson is on death row for the killing of his 2-year-old child. Legislators on Wednesday issued a subpoena for Robertson to testify before a House committee next week as they reconsider the lawfulness of his conviction. The unusual plan to buy time, some of them conceded, has never been tried before. Those are your headlines. Now here's a look at your weather on the ones.
Happy Friday, everybody. I'm meteorologist Ramel Carpenter. It's been a beautiful week across the eastern half of the United States with the first taste of fall for many, and that is set to continue once again over the course of the day today. Highs will be in the upper 60s, low to middle 70s. We are warming up, though, across the northern plains, and as we head into the weekend, temperatures could get into the 80s in a place like Minneapolis. Meanwhile, we're going to stay dry and quiet with high pressure in full control across the eastern half of the United States, but across the Rockies, that's where weather is going to be a bit more active with some snowfall and some rain. We'll talk about that and more coming up in 10 minutes.
Thanks so much for joining us here on Spectrum News. I'm Bree Driscoll. Today is Friday, October 18th. Our top story, what officials in Israel and the United States are hoping could be the beginning of the end of the Israel-Hamas war. Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar has been killed. Sinwar was the mastermind behind the October 7th attack that left 1,200 Israelis dead. Spectrum's national reporter Angie Gonzalez has more on what happens now and what the developments may mean for the hostages still being held by Hamas.
Reaction to the death of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar, reminding some of the U.S. response following the killing of Osama bin Laden. The alleged mastermind behind the October 7th terror attacks in Israel, Sinwar was believed to have been hiding in tunnels beneath Gaza for months.
He was found by accident. A group of trainees, not more than 10 months in the military, were going in a patrol to take care of some bomb that had a malfunction.
Drone video released by Israeli Defense Forces shows Sinwar in his final moments. The images show a person, face obscured, look at the camera, then throw what IDF officials say was a piece of wood at the drone. Sinwar's identity later confirmed using DNA and dental records. President Joe Biden, arriving in Germany last night, said he'd spoken with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
It's a good day for the world. I called Netanyahu to congratulate him getting Sinwar.
The president also told Netanyahu now is the time to move towards a ceasefire in Gaza, but there is uncertainty about what happens next. In an address to the Israeli people, Netanyahu said this.
Today, evil has suffered a heavy blow, but the task before us is not yet complete.
The Prime Minister did say Sinwar's death was the beginning of the end and urged remaining members of Hamas to release the roughly 100 hostages still being held in Gaza. Some family members of hostages taken by Hamas want Netanyahu to commit to ending the war now.
We will not feel like this victory is complete until the hostages are here. That's what we celebrate here in Israel, the return of hostages, not the death of our enemies.
A senior Hamas official confirmed the death of Sinwar this morning, saying that it was both painful and distressing, but that the group will eventually be victorious. In Washington, Angie Gonzalez, Spectrum News.
Joining me now is journalist Dan Perry, who is the former Middle East editor of the Associated Press. Thank you so much for joining us. I want to begin with Israel had been searching for Yahya Sinwar for more than a year, as he was considered the mastermind of the October 7th attacks. Now that he's been killed, how does this change the conflict?
It may be potentially quite a pivot point, because it creates a symbol and it creates a genuine opening both on a tactical and a strategic level. The war had been dragging on. Neither side figured out how to create an endgame. Much of it had to do with Sinwar's personal insistence that a return of the hostages must mean an end to the war. And Israel, and a pullout by Israel, and a return of Hamas to power in Gaza. Israel was resistant to that because in the Middle East especially, but maybe in life, symbolism has value, and they didn't want to give him that victory parade in Gaza. Well, he will no longer have that parade. His legacy is the picture of him lying dead amid the rubble. I think this opens up a possibility for Israel to do a deal with whoever is his successor that is more palatable to Israel. And of course, there's a series of tripwires that then happen. An end to the war in Gaza probably means an end to the situation in Lebanon, and possibly an end to the danger of a massive regional conflagration.
So in your opinion, this could really be a tipping point. Sinwar was one of the elements that was holding up a ceasefire deal in the Israel-Hamas war. Now that he is dead, many of the families of the hostages are increasing pressure on the Israeli government to bring their loved ones home. Let's take a listen to that.
It's a new day in the Middle East. It's a new day for the world, certainly in our little corner of the Middle East. So that can be used, I would hope, to create a better future, both for the hostages, Israel, and the Palestinians. The fear, of course, is that it won't roll out that way, that Hamas fighters, upon hearing of the death of their leader, will take out their frustrations or their panic on the hostages.
Is his death going to change negotiations now?
Well, one issue is Israel doesn't know who it's going to negotiate with. I mean, Sinwar called all the shots before, and there's no obvious new leader of Hamas. And so many of them have been killed that there are really kind of two potential people. One is Sinwar's brother, Mohammed, and the other is Khalid Mashal in Qatar. As I say, both on a tactical and strategic level, his demise has the potential to create a pivot point. You know, not every terrorist is necessarily replaceable, and not every political person is replaceable. Some people are singularities. To state an obvious one, Hitler was when he died, when he committed suicide in the bunker. That was basically the end of the Nazis in World War II.
Very quickly now.
Quite at that level, but he approaches that level. There is a possibility that the previously unfathomable notion of Hamas surrendering, which could not be with Sinwar in power, becomes fathomable.
And very quickly, what do you make of the United States response thus far?
Well, I think they're echoing the approach that I just articulated myself. I mean, Biden's obviously happy. Any reasonable person in the world has long since gotten past the inelegance of assassinations in situations as we have here, and Biden basically welcomed the move. I think he wants Israel to now shift its approach away from rejectionism of all his grand schemes of beginning a two-state process with the Palestinians and having that lead to peace with Saudi Arabia and a regional umbrella, a raid against Iran. Israel's been disinterested in all of that, and I think he's now hoping that a broader strategic shift may be possible, which I hate to tell Biden would require a political change in Israel, and that is also no longer inconceivable. I could see the opposition joining the Netanyahu government for a limited time until elections in 6 months or a year, during which Netanyahu is freed of the shackles of the right wing and can proceed towards such Biden-esque notions.
Very interesting perspective for us. Daniel Perry, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Coming up on this morning's Political Buzz, a recap of the Al Smith charity dinner in New York City, plus what to look out for as the two candidates head to Michigan on the campaign trail.
Here's the deal. People need a place to explore national issues that have an impact on their community. To understand those issues better, we're bringing together our team of local political journalists from across the country to break down what's happening. So join us every week to catch up on the key stories making a big difference across the nation and in your local community.
Watch The Big Deal with Errol Lewis Friday nights at 9 Eastern, 8 Central on Spectrum News Plus. Available on all of your favorite devices exclusively on Spectrum.
What if you never had to worry about what you could do? Because you could do anything. Anywhere could be the center of everywhere. And boundaries only existed to be pushed. So the only limit you faced was how big you could dream. What would you do then? Some pretty cool stuff, I bet. Yeah, that'd be some life. That'd be life unlimited.
You're not gonna get it all right. Just make sure you nail the big stuff.
Mama!
Like making sure your kids are in the right seat for their age and size. Get it right at nhtsa.gov/the-right-seat.
Even the mighty might not see it coming. It's prediabetes, and it captures 1 in 3 adults. But you can escape. Take the 1-minute prediabetes risk test to know where you stand and prevent or delay type 2 diabetes. Be your own hero on smartphones everywhere at doihaveprediabetes.org.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm meteorologist Ramel Carpenter with you on this Friday morning. Latest drought monitor released yesterday, and it did not bring good news across most of the Central Plains, where we have moderate to severe drought, even some extreme drought in a few spots. But over towards southern Ohio, parts of West Virginia, areas that need the rainfall the most across the lower 48 are under exceptional drought conditions. And unfortunately, our weather pattern looks pretty dry across many of those locations as we head into the next several days. High pressure is to thank for that. We have that building in, which is keeping our weather pattern dry and quiet across the eastern half of the United States, allowing for a great deal of sunshine and some fall-like weather as we head into the weekend. Not the case, though, across the Rockies. That's where we have this storm system tracking across that region, bringing some snowfall in the higher elevations and some rain, and the potential for some severe thunderstorms in a few spots as we head into the evening hours today and even into parts of this weekend. So as we get towards the afternoon hours today, this is 3 o'clock. This is where the only active weather is going to be across the lower 48, here in the Pacific Northwest as well. But most of that shower and thunderstorm activity stays across New Mexico and parts of Colorado as we head into the end of the day today, into parts of our Saturday. And this is going to continue through Saturday afternoon to evening and even into our Sunday morning, where we're expecting some heavier rainfall totals up to that 2 to 3 inch range as well. And you'll see that with the next 3 days, and most of that falling across parts of Colorado, New Mexico, adding up to around 3+ inches in a few spots. Same case for the Pacific Northwest as well. But notice we're going to stay bone dry across the eastern half of the United States through this upcoming weekend into early next week. Good news if you have any outdoor plans, bad news for those drought conditions. And I mentioned it doesn't look like we're going to be picking up any significant rainfall anytime soon. Drier than average conditions look likely across the Northeast into parts of the Southwest. Unfortunately, the Northwest, though, will continue to stay a bit unsettled as we head into the next 8 to 14 days. Meanwhile, though, we have a nice taste of fall in store for us. As we head into next week, though, we are going to be warming back up temperature-wise, and we're still watching the tropics very closely. We'll talk about that and much more coming up in 10 minutes on your Weather on the Ones.
now for our political buzz. Our Jason Feckner joins us now. Jason, the death of Yahya Sinwar being described as a pivotal moment in the Israel-Hamas war, very much an issue this election cycle. How does this news impact the presidential candidates?
Bree, good morning. Happy Friday to you. So much obviously still in flux. And just a few days ago, intelligence sources had told CNN that Israel had its plan to retaliate against Iran and planned to do so ahead of Election Day. And a lot of Democrats thought, oh no, here comes the October surprise, and the conflict there in the Middle East is about to ramp up before the election. Now, with the death of Yahya Sinwar, a lot of people, Democrats included President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, are saying that this is that moment now for Israel and Hamas to end this war, for the hostages to be released, and for this conflict to end there. And as you mentioned, there's a lot of optimism that that could be the case. Meanwhile, Benjamin Netanyahu there in Israel saying that the war will continue. So a lot of moving parts to all of this. And, obviously, I think definitely signs of optimism out there, and the White House surely hoping to end this conflict as soon as possible, and definitely by the time of the election.
Both candidates heading to Michigan today, which is one of the largest Arab American populations in the U.S. What are they focusing while they're in Michigan today?
Well, you've got two things going on in Michigan, and it's one of the things that had come up during Harris's barnstorming of Wisconsin yesterday, where she had three separate campaign events here. You have the focus on the Arab American population. You also have that focus on union support, and former President Donald Trump has done a pretty good job by his account of peeling back some of that union support from that traditional Democratic voting bloc this time around. So, Harris looking to make the argument to Democrats today, also to shore up some Arab American support out there, possibly in the wake of the death of Yahya Sinwar as well. A big union rep had introduced her in her last appearance in Wisconsin in Green Bay last night. So clearly those are the two main voting blocks that both of these candidates are looking to shore up ahead of Election Day.
And Jason, both Vice President Harris and former President Trump making appearances at the Al Smith dinner last night. Harris was in a taped appearance while Trump was in person. Now, this is a long-standing event that presidential candidates have historically attended. Do you think it matters to voters that she wasn't there? And how do you think they did at this roast of sorts?
Yeah, possibly. I don't know if a lot of voters are going to, change their decision on their ballot because she sent in a taped piece rather than being there in person. I think the optics are pretty good for former President Donald Trump. Basically, there next to Chuck Schumer as if they're having a traditional evening among old friends. So, I saw a lot of Democrats on social media saying, oh, God, what's Schumer doing there? And, it's kind of normalizing former President Trump in this space. Trump supporters, obviously, they would appreciate his jokes. It kind of turned into a traditional rally for him. And for those of us of a certain age, having Molly Shannon in the taped piece as Mary Catherine Gallagher, her old Saturday Night Live character, relatively entertaining in that piece. But for younger voters out there and older voters out there, they might be like, well, who's this person with Vice President Harris, and what does this have to do with anything? So I think a bit of a wash on the Al Smith dinner there on Thursday night.
All right, Jason Feckner, thank you very much.
Have a wonderful weekend.
Following up now on Georgia's election ruling, Republicans are appealing a decision by a Georgia Supreme Court judge to block new rules set by the state's election board. This includes one rule requiring the state's election day ballots to be counted by hand after the close of voting. A lawsuit was filed seeking to have a judge declare the rule, among others, recently passed invalid, saying they exceeded the state board's authority. The judge's ruling said it is too much, too late, and blocked its enforcement while he considers the merits of the case. At least 3 are dead and 4 others critically injured after a Mississippi bridge collapsed. The span was in the process of being demolished at the time of the collapse. The Mississippi Department of Transportation says the bridge had been closed to traffic since September 18th. Prosecutors in Argentina continuing their probe into the sudden death of former One Direction singer Liam Payne, saying the circumstances surrounding his death were suspicious and possibly involved drugs, but there was no sign a third party was involved. Payne, who was 31, was found dead after falling from his third-floor hotel room. As news traveled, fans around the world mourned, with some swarming to his hotel to pay tribute.
I love them. I love him. I will do always. Nothing. I can believe it. I can believe it. He was my bias, my favorite, and I can't believe he's gone.
All 4 of Payne's former bandmates say they're completely devastated. Just ahead on Spectrum News, we take you for an inside look at how researchers in Southern California are literally brewing a solution to make future vaccines stronger, all while preserving the environment.
Spectrum News Plus. News from a new perspective, dedicated to refreshing storytelling and empowering communities across the nation. With balanced reporting, providing real context and in-depth coverage 24 hours a day.
Here's a look at your forecast across the country.
Local stories, connecting communities. We are Spectrum News Plus. Streaming now on the Spectrum News app and free with your Spectrum subscription.
Never have to worry about thinking too big? Because you have a connection that's ready for anything. That's Life Unlimited. That's Spectrum.
Food isn't just fuel to live, it's fuel to grow. My family relied on public assistance to help provide meals for us. These meals fueled my involvement in theater and the arts as a child, which fostered my love for acting. The Feeding America network of food banks helps millions of people put food on the table. When people are fed, futures are nourished. Join the movement to end hunger, and together we can open endless possibilities for people to thrive. Visit feedingamerica.org/act now.
You're not going to get it all right. Just make sure you nail the big stuff, like making sure your kids are in the right seat for their age and size. Get it right at nhtsa.gov/the-right-seat.
Good Friday morning, everybody. I'm meteorologist Ramel Carpenter. It's been a nice second half of the week across the eastern half of the United States. First taste of fall for many, especially along the Gulf Coast, where we have drier and much cooler air settling in nicely. And that's set to continue for one more day before our temperatures start to rise just a little bit as we head towards the end of this weekend. As for today, though, closing out the week with highs in the low to middle 60s from Portland, Maine to New York City. We'll be in the upper 60s, low 70s across the Carolinas, down towards Atlanta as well. Low 70s in New Orleans and across St. Louis and Kansas City as well. And take a look at Minneapolis. Highs in the lower 70s today, but that temperature trend continues to warm up as we head into the next couple of days. As for your weekend forecast in Kansas City, looking pretty good with a great deal of sunshine, high pressure, and full control of our weather pattern. We're actually going to get back into the 80s as we get into the day on Sunday. As for the Carolinas, the Raleigh area going to see temperatures warming up into the mid 70s, a few degrees above the average, but still a great deal of sunshine. Great news for the State Fair, which kicked off earlier this week. This is the first weekend for that, and it's going to be a beautiful one as well. As for our temperatures across the rest of the lower 48, take a look at this. 25 plus degrees above the average up in Minneapolis. We're going to get back into the low to middle 80s in the Great Lakes, where temperatures are supposed to be in the 60s for this time of year. Same case for New York, Chicago, parts of the Carolinas as well. Going to be dealing with above average temperatures, and unfortunately, that trend is going to continue as we close out the month of October. This is the 8 to 14 day temperature outlook. Below normal temperatures likely in the Pacific Northwest. Elsewhere across the lower 48, we're going to be dealing with above normal temperatures as we head into the end of the month. The good news is, though, early November, it does look like we're going to see another cold blast across the eastern half of the United States, so keep that in mind. As for the tropics, we're watching a couple of systems, one in yellow, which was actually the better chance for development, but it's been battling a lot of drier air and wind shear as it approaches the Caribbean islands. Not expecting that to develop, but this tropical wave in the Caribbean is going to be working its way into the Yucatan Peninsula over the next couple of days. Has a medium chance for tropical development But regardless of that, it is going to be bringing a lot of moisture to the Yucatan Peninsula as we head into the next couple of days. Meanwhile, though, we're closing in on this year's hurricane season. Once we get to the end of this month, we have one more month to go for the 2024 Atlantic hurricane season, which comes to an end at the end of November. So we are about 8 more weeks left in the hurricane season. And if that system in the Caribbean does develop, the name it will receive is Nadine, our end name system for the 2024 Atlantic hurricane season.
A scientist in Southern California is brewing up solutions in her lab that are helping to make future vaccines, like the one for COVID-19, more effective. Spectrum's Bree Steffen is in San Diego, where researchers are taking a sustainable approach to both environmental and public health challenges.
They smell great.
Science has never smelled more delicious.
Smell like beer and bread, and it smells like happiness to me.
Chemistry professor Yuzong Liu is literally brewing up solutions at Scripps Research. She harnessed her background in synthetic biology to produce QS21, a powerful molecule that boosts immune response and helps make vaccines more effective. QS21 is traditionally harvested from the soapbark tree, but she copied the genes and pasted them onto baker's yeast.
And now we're ready for some good brewing.
Yuzong Liu says it's similar to the fermentation process to make beer. She says accessing large quantities of QS21 is a major challenge. It's commercially sourced from soapbark trees that grow in specific areas of Chile, and only once trees are at least 30 years old. Now they can use the yeast to brew QS21 from cheap, simple sugars.
Instead of having to harvest the original plant and wait for decades for the tree to grow. And instead, you can harvest this molecule in just a matter of a couple of days.
Ben Naiman is the director of medicinal plants research at the San Diego Botanic Garden. He knows how important the soapbark tree is to the future.
One molecule that's produced in this plant, in its bark especially, is going to change the world.
He says the Chilean government was forced to introduce legislation to prevent deforestation of the soapbark tree. He says he's encouraged to see a more sustainable way to produce the molecule that will reduce environmental impacts and meet the growing demand.
What they're doing is really alleviating a lot of that economic pressure to grow and strip trees too slowly or to forcefully go into the forest and deforest or poach the population that's already there. And so their biotechnology is actually a conservation tool.
This is what yeast looks like after a couple of days.
As the race to find cures for infectious diseases and to prevent future pandemics ramps up around the world, Yuzong Liu believes access to QS21 is more important now than ever before.
We didn't think we would be able to make it, but somehow we were able to. Just make it 1,000 times faster and access large quantities of it.
Brewing solutions in the lab that will have a global impact.
There you go.
Bree Steffen, Spectrum News.
Researchers really branching out there to find some new solutions. And you can always stay connected with us here at Spectrum News by getting your national and local headlines on the go. Just download the free Spectrum News app. It's available in the App Store and on Google Play. I'm Bree Driscoll. Thanks so much for watching. Your Spectrum News in 90 is coming up right after this short break. Stay with us.
The 2024 election will decide who leads our nation and the balance of power in Congress, impacting all of us. From Capitol Hill to the Oval Office, let Spectrum News be your resource for balanced, in-depth coverage with our dedicated experts in local politics. Strengthening democracy by informing your community. That's our mission. Available on all of your favorite devices, exclusively on Spectrum.
At Spectrum Enterprise, we give over 80% of the Fortune 500 the technology solutions they need to meet their growing business demands. Whether it's ultra-fast connectivity, seamless transactions, safe and secure data, or reliable always-on technology. These businesses demand better, and we're here to deliver it. Get a network you can rely on with our 100% uptime SLA guarantee.
Sometimes in life, in order to move forward, it helps to look back.
To learn from the pioneers and trailblazers.
To gain inspiration from those who came before us.
To show us what it means to act with empathy and to show that love has no labels.
Join WWE and Love Has No Labels throughout the year in celebrating people from all communities and heritages.
Because when love has no labels,
that's a love we can all fight for.
Women are bad with money. That's what the world's been saying for centuries. But now we've got something to say.
Save it. It's time to save ourselves by saving our money.
Until we're no longer 80% more likely than men to live in poverty in retirement.
Save it. The falsehoods, the feelings of fault.
Then, the funds. Learn how to save for your retirement at WeSaySaveIt.org.